It's the Sports Peninsula podcast. Coming up, the Detroit Lions righted the ship last Sunday, defeating the Chicago Bears 34-17 in Soldier Field, making their record 13-2 on the year. This is now the most wins in franchise history in the regular season. The Lions could clinch the NFC North with a win in San Francisco, coupled with a Minnesota loss to Green Bay and Minneapolis. We'll look at the victory over the Bears, the upcoming Monday Night Football matchup, and the playoff scenarios next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. And welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Drzinski Drew, and it is December 28th, Saturday morning, recording a couple of days before the Monday night matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. And joining me to talk about the Lions and more, Coach Andy Shield, Marine City Mariners. Coach, how you doing?
Drew, doing well. Happy holidays to you.
Yeah, same to you.
We are in the midst of the holiday season in rainy Detroit. We're more like London, England, this week at least. Maybe next week might be different, but doing well, and a lot of great football. Probably one of the busiest football days of the year is today. I believe we have like 5 or 6 bowl games today. So, and a little bit of NFL football as well. So exciting times ahead.
Yeah, there's 3 NFL games today. Like you said, 6 bowl games. A lot of stuff going on. Love the Penei Sewell jersey, by the way, Coach. Did Santa Claus bring that to you?
Yeah. Santa Claus brought him to himself. This is a little treat. I typically, try to keep that kind of stuff to a minimum, make it about, the season of giving. But usually there's always a little extra treat for old dad at the end of the road when it comes to a jersey or a hoodie or some sort of garment. This year, we did this right here.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
I might be in the market. It's painful to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'll wear it once a year, and they do. The family Christmases now, the big theme is to wear pajamas or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been able to locate for a very, very good price a Clark Griswold Blackhawks jersey.
Nice.
So I may buy that next. Yes, that's a Blackhawks jersey.
I get it.
It'll be worn once a year, and it would cap off that outfit quite well.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, those are pretty cool too. That's Clark Griswold, though. It's kind of like, remember our buddy the Grinder? He had a Spielman Ohio State jersey, but it was
this is true. This is true. Very true.
It was okay.
He's a true blue U of M guy.
Yep, but Chris Spielman transcends that, and Clark Griswold does as well. I would agree. So, no, good stuff, Coach. Let's jump into it here. Let's start talking about what the Lions did last week, week 16. They beat the Bears 34-17. Game was never really in doubt. 13-2, Coach. Best record in franchise history. Beat last year's 12 wins. Beat the 91 teams 12 wins. They were 12-4. But yet they're still tied, not only for the North, but they're not tied for the conference first seed, but they're tied for the North. They have the conference first seed. Can they stay perfect on the road? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But, Coach, just talk about – I apologize for that, but let's talk about this Bears game here. The Lions ended up getting out to a 20-0 lead, and ultimately, just kind of held serve after that and won pretty, like I said, convincingly 34-17. Talk
Stayed
about
healthy.
They stayed healthy. That was huge. Talk about that game a little bit.
They stayed healthy. It was a much more convincing win. Since Tyreek Stevenson celebrating early and the Washington Commanders beating the Bears on a Hail Mary pass, they were 4-2 when that happened.
Yeah.
They were, at that time, it was anybody's race. They were 1 game behind the Lions. The Lions were 5-1. So they were right in there with Minnesota and Green Bay, behind us or right with us there. Since then, they have lost 10 consecutive football games. they're an absolute tailspin. They're not playing for each other. They're not playing for really anything right now. There's been some, Caleb Williams has been C+ish, I would say at times, very C-like at times too. This year, blocking remains to be an issue. Roma Dunze, definitely it was a growth year for him. He didn't explode off the map. DJ Moore was up and down. In that defense, held serve at times and kept him in some ball games. But it ultimately has been worn down. And this was not a very good football team. They really are struggling just with communicative stuff. I mean, we saw more like time management issues by the Bears that ultimately cost them the Thanksgiving Day game. When they let the clock bleed and didn't get a field goal opportunity to send that game to overtime. You saw more of those kinds of issues, which there's definitely some player communication there too. That's not great. So I mean, this is not a good football team. And they went in there and they put their thumb down right on them and took care of business. So I mean, I'm very proud of how they did things. Because Caleb Williams can give you trouble if you let him. And there are some times he did a few things here and there, but I mean, turnovers and just getting Roma Dunze getting the ball stripped away from him and those kinds of things. Those are the things that get you to 4-12.
Great point. Absolutely great point, Coach. Diving into this game a little bit deeper statistically. I mean, we talked off air before we started recording here. Realistically, the Lions took the defensive approach that said, we're not going to let you run either with DeAndre Swift or Caleb Williams. We're going to stop the run. You're going to have to beat us in the pocket at the pass. And to your point, he was C+ in this game because he played statistically. He had a solid effort out there, 324 yards passing. He didn't throw any interceptions. He had a couple touchdown throws. Keenan Allen of that receiving trio has been the one bright spot for them all year. I know he certainly had a big game on Thanksgiving against the Lions, but Caleb Williams was solid. Now he did fumble once, and the two turnovers, the Dunze fumble and the Williams fumble, ultimately cost them that football game because that was a 10-point swing right there. The Lions scored 10 points off those turnovers, and who knows what the Bears could have done offensively had they completed those drives. So that ultimately was the difference in this football game. But talk about that approach, Coach, and how effective that was.
Well, there's a couple of different things to think about here, in regards to the quarterback position. And this goes very, very much like across other sports, like the point guard, in basketball, like a pitcher, like a starting pitcher in baseball. And I guess to a certain degree, I guess you could look at the hockey goalie position to a lesser degree, though. But the point guard in basketball and the starting pitcher in baseball, you could look at the quarterback, and really it comes down to two different things: how well do you play the game, and how well do you manage the game? And there has to be a marriage of both. There has to be a marriage of both. The winners, which ultimately that's what it should be about. I mean, and I guess the leagues and agents and all sorts of different people, corporations, sporting goods and sports related corporations all do a great job of heralding the great player. And then we talk about stats, and I'm a stats person too, but stats don't win football games. They don't. We can talk, well, he played pretty good. Look at his 26 for 40, 335 and 3 touchdowns or whatever. Those are good statistics.
Yep. He
made some plays out there. He played the game and can play the game very well, but how well does he manage the game? How often are you scoring, and how are you scoring at the right times? How efficient are you in the red zone? Can you convert on third down? What are the things here? Are you avoiding sacks? Are you avoiding penalties? By getting rid of the football timely. These are the things that, and it's not his fault that Rome Odunze fumbled the football when he did. That's totally on Rome Odunze. And
yeah,
Rome, that you're not going to be a big time X wide receiver if you're going to get the ball stripped like that out, from you and those kinds of things, or knocked out of there. That's not on Caleb Williams. But from what I can see, plenty to build on, and he's going to have some years. But until he becomes a bit of a game manager and makes the game less about himself, because he might not be like Anthony Richardson and so demonstrative, like basically just pointing fingers all over the offense, which but Caleb Williams has to do some growing up too, and not think that he's the hero. He's one of 11 out there, and that those are the quarterbacks that ultimately succeed in this league at the in the way of getting Lombardi trophies and having perennial playoff contending teams.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. I mean, as good as he looks we saw this with Matt Stafford, right? Early in his career, we would see nice statistical gains. What Pat Stafford, right? I mean, we heard that a lot. Just because statistically the game he looked good, it didn't mean that the game was managed necessarily the way it needed to be, because there were often times where the Lions would go devoid of offense in the middle of a football game, and then in the fourth quarter you'd get this push. I get it.
The defense was back, though, Drew. I mean, the defense was back. I mean, 59 yards rushing. I know that some of the sacks and plays behind the line of scrimmage aided to that. But you have Trevor Nowatzki coming up big and making some plays back there.
Yep.
Brian Branch had 12 tackles. There was again just some great special teams efforts out there. Jack Campbell was very active. Speak to what you think of Amik Robertson, Drew, and how he stepped up in this game. We needed a corner to step up. We needed one to step up, and he's going to have to continue to do that, because we're probably going to have to roll with him as that starter on that other side for the remainder of the year. That's really what it looks like. Speak to what you thought of Amik Robertson.
Well, one great point. He played very well, and quite frankly, we had talked about that last week. Was that an option versus just plugging Vildor in and rolling? No, again, no offense to the guy, but Vildor, he's gotten better since he first cracked the lineup a couple weeks ago, but I felt a lot better with Robertson going there and Branch at the nickel. But all of that happened because Melifonwu came back. Now, Robertson played a really strong football game. He was cited several times for making good plays in that game, breaking up passes. He did a nice job. They need that going forward. If they can get that from Robertson and keep getting an improved Terrion Arnold on the other side, you got Branch at the slot, you're good. Melifonwu made an immediate impact. His first game of the year, he had 4 tackles. He had a hurry. He had a sack. That's what last half of last year, Iffy Melifonwu was awesome in that role. We need him to be awesome again. And all boxes checked last week, Coach. Robertson definitely played very well. Those moves and the way Robertson and Melifonwu played really set the tone, in my view, to allow that front seven to do what they did. I thought it was huge. I thought he was huge in that game.
Yeah, and that is what he brings. He is definitely a sub-package safety, and we don't need him to be a starter here. He's not going to be a starter here. We have 2 Pro Bowl caliber starting safeties, and neither one of them are named Ike Melifonwu. But he's a sub-package safety that we have to depend on a little bit now because of how we're flexing some of the defensive backs based off of the coverage because of the personnel issues that we are having. I expected to see some rotational errors from him, and he did. I mean, he is not, but again, clearly, you made the perfect point, and you're 100% correct. He brings great things to the table. It's just not in coverage. And well, he's a defensive back. Bit of a problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not in the sub package, because you can play him in a phone booth. You can do some different things. he can play in coverage and certain kind of stunts and movement schemes and disguising and things like that, and come up with a big play. Maybe definitely in coverage, but he's not a guy that you want to line up cover 4, cover 2, cover 3, or be man free and find the spot that he's got to rotate over and bracket and climb and end up taking the deep ball away. Those are things we want. We'd be better off having Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch having their hand at, but when you got it, you can move him around and rotate him and send him behind the quarterback. He creates all sorts of problems out there. And he made, like you said, he made some run stops that were real important. He added to that 59 yards rushing. So yeah, Ike Melanfon definitely had his presence felt. I totally agree with you. It was great seeing him back. Drew, we getting healthier on the defensive side at all? Are we getting closer to being healthier on the defensive side?
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up. A perfect segue into what's happening right now. And realistically, Coach, I actually put the list up here for us to share, and I'll put that full screen for the folks watching right now. But for the Lions on the defensive side, realistically, right now, you're hoping you might get Reeves-Maben back from the neck. He is practicing. He's in his window right now, so he's questionable. Right now, they didn't get tremendously healthy. Getting Melifonwu back, hopefully Arnold's okay. I think he's dealing with an illness this week, so hopefully that's not going to be an issue. But I think defensively we'll see a lot of the same guys coming in. Anzalone's progressing well. He'll be ready for the playoffs. That's a big plus, Coach. And then and also but not a lot of guys are coming back necessarily for this game coming up, but at least we didn't add to that list, to your point. So I feel comfortable with what they had out there against the Bears versus what they had the week before against the Bills.
I see a great name in full practice on that list. That practiced in full yesterday on that list, and his name is Khalif Raymond.
Yes, the offensive side of the ball. That's where they will. Khalif Raymond could be back. He's got the foot. Graham Glasgow is questionable, but it sounds like he's trending towards playing. Although, and one sec, I want to say Montgomery, he's not having surgery, Coach. It sounds like he doesn't have a tear, so he's going to try and rehab this thing and maybe be ready for possibly the divisional playoff if assuming the Lions get the bye week. Even if they didn't, we'd assume they'd get to that level. But at the same time, that's a positive. I agree with you. But yeah, but Christian Mahogany, I'd like to talk to you about. What did you think of his performance in that game?
Just one more thing on Khalif Raymond, if possible, Drew.
Yeah. Our
special teams get a big boost there.
Yes.
Our special teams get a big boost there. And it may be more in the Minnesota game, that they really get him acclimated there, but we get a big boost in punt return there, which has been, really, really helpful to the offense and creating a little different of a field position situation. But getting in, if you want to start transitioning to the offensive side of the football, fantastic, Drew. And yeah, I think that was a guy that we really saw elevate himself. Jahmyr Gibbs had a big game. We'll talk about that. Yes, Jared Goff had yet another tremendously efficient game and a big game. We'll talk about that. Yes, our receivers, and especially Waymo, despite, doggone it, getting another one, he has a hard time getting away from that Tyreek Stevenson character. He definitely has a few things to say to him every time we he's got to definitely check in with him. It seems like at least once a game, and usually results in a yellow flag. We got to clean that up. But he had a big game. But I think the underlying thing is what we really have to keep to the core. And this show is definitely going to be one that heralds the offensive line. And that really, and yes, I'm wearing an offensive lineman's jersey right now. And yes, those are the areas of football I generally coach and have coached and have played in and those kinds of things. So, but folks, the lines are the dominant areas of the football field. That's how Michigan and Team 144 dominated last year on both sides. That's how we're getting it done, really, too. And being, the top team in the NFL and the NFC, not the NFL right now, it's the Chiefs, but the NFC. And this offensive line is something that you need to always pay attention to. It's the engine. How are things running there? And, the guys whose jersey I have on right now aside, he's 23 and healthy and probably the best offensive lineman in all of football. The other four guys are right with them. However, right with him in their positions in their own right. However, age and injuries are not as on their side as they are of Penny Sewell's. These guys are a little bit banged up, and it's starting to show, and it's a bit of a concern. We need to see some reinforcements start to emerge. And Drew, you hit it right on the head. Christian Mahogany, who we have been talking about on this podcast for nearly one calendar year. We talked about him and featured him he was one of our dark horse candidates to be drafted, and a player we even said would look good in Honolulu blue and silver when we previewed interior offensive lineman last year when he came out of Boston College.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, on day 3, the Lions nabbed him up, and it was, we knew this was good. Now, he was ill, and he had mono, and he had a pretty extensive case of it. I mean, he cut some weight, and it really hit him hard, and he had a little bit of a climb back into getting into playing shape to do it. But and it took a while, and he was a day 3 pick, so he didn't have maybe the luxury of camp and some of the competition that he kind of was a little bit more baptism under fire. Well, sure enough, he's starting at left guard, and he did an outstanding job. Statistically, I don't have it up, but in regards to his pass blocking was picture perfect. I think he had several run pins and key blocks, and was very, very forceful inside there and taking care of pretty solid Chicago Bear run defense. We were able to do exactly what we wanted to do, and Christian Mahogany was a huge part of that, and that's so great to see. It's so great to see because, Drew, it's not we may the both guards in the center, we may be replacing them in the next the left tackle, both guards in the center, we may be replacing them in the next 3 years. It's distinctly possible. I'm not saying I hope that happens, but I can guarantee you 2 of those players will probably be retired by that point in time. I don't know who they would be. I would love Kevin Zeitler to resign here. Graham Glasgow is welcome here forever. Now, does he necessarily have to be the starter? No. He can be kind of the flex player. And honestly, if Frank Ragnow's injuries, he had a great comeback game too.
Yeah,
he had a great comeback game too, which was great to see because Ed Oliver made his life miserable in that Buffalo game, and that was great to see because he's been proven to probably be arguably the best center in football over the course of the last 3 to 5 years. So and we once again. You saw how important Taylor Decker is out there in regards to his communication, how he directs. He's got so many games, logged under his belt. But he is the elder statesman on that offensive line, along with Graham Glasgow. And, Kevin Zeitler really is. But, as far as the Detroit Lions go, and you just see what he brings to the table. And his still play is extremely effective. And, he's the left tackle. He's the guy that's protecting, Jared Goff's blind side. So it was really good to see Christian Mahogany elevate and step up because we're going to need to start seeing that. We need to start seeing that of other offensive linemen too.
Yeah,
I think we'll be adding some this spring.
They're because you're right. Let's face it, Glasgow, I would much rather looking forward to next year, all things being equal, not knowing who they're going to add potentially or whatever, But I would like to see Mahogany keep progressing to where he would take that starting role, and Graham Glasgow's that uber backup who can play any interior spot. Because Big Frank, he's got a couple nagging injuries that ain't going away. We know that. They're not.
Glasgow might be the right guard next year.
He might be the right guard next year.
Zeitler may retire.
He might
or decide. Kevin's a guy that he's played in a few different cities in his career. He's a great football player. I mean, he's got a long career. We're talking 13, 14 years. I mean, that's almost, if he goes into the 15, 16 year, that's almost going to one day get him a Canton jacket just just because of his, for how long he played and started. And he Pro Bowl caliber player. This year he's a Pro Bowl caliber player. Absolutely. Love to have him back. But he's a big time family man. He's got a wonderful family. They're tremendously supportive people and real just great people. And he's from Wisconsin. And if we'd hate to see it because we know who it would benefit, and it certainly would, and it would not be good for us. But I mean, would that be a perfect fit for him and his family? I would think it would be it'd make life pretty good, because I know they come here often to see him and that kind of thing. But I do think he enjoys it here. I'd love to see him back. He's he's a Patrick Kane type contract. He's gonna be a 1 year guy. I mean, he's gonna be 35 years old.
Yeah.
But once again, we have some assurance. Exactly what you said. If we could put him in that spot, and if Christian Mahogany's that guy for one more year too, where he's the flex guard, or comes in because honestly, he makes life better too. As long as Graham Glasgow's not the guy getting hurt, if Frank Ragnow can't go, because Glasgow now goes to center.
Yep. And
in comes Mahogany. So it really solves an issue. We can keep rolling with things as long as Mr. Zeitler comes back, as long as Mr. Glasgow wants to play, and as long as Mr. Ragnow wants to play. We can kind of roll with what we got at the guards and center with Mahogany. And Giovanni Manu is, if he transitions out to tackle as a backup flex tackle, however that can be. But I think we have our third guard, and we have Awasika. So I mean,
which very good.
Really, Manu, once he starts to develop, I think is going to become a tackle.
He's got the frame to do it, because I mean he's very tall and he's got the weight. He's over 300, but it's a lean 300, man. I mean he's in great shape. I mean if he can play as
he's
well,
really Dan Skipper's probably protege.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
That's probably who we're looking at is in the replacing Dan Skipper one day.
Yep.
Is Manu. So I mean, so now is he a starting offensive tackle? No. So I mean, those are the positions. I think we could look at guard, and if we got double whammed and had multiple retirements on the interior line, we're looking at a starting guard that we need to acquire as well. But it looks like it's the tackle spots that we really need to address, probably most, and really one of them, because Penny Sewell will be here for a long, long time.
Yeah, you need the heir apparent, or at least somebody that and Skipper certainly was able to.
He's still done well when Taylor Decker's been down. He's done a nice job.
Yeah, he really did. So bottom line, you're 100% right. That offensive line, we know that's the main cog of this whole machine, man. That you need a spark plug to run the Ferrari, but that engine is that offensive line. It truly is.
So Drew, so just transitioning, talking about managing a game and playing the game. We go over and look once again. Caleb Williams was 26 of 40, 334, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. Jared Goff was 23 of 32, 336, 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. Similar stat lines.
Yep.
Similar stat lines, much different results. If you look at the team side of things and what the Lions were able to do, in regards to, run the ball for 146 yards, 475 yards, way more first downs. I want to say we had 27 first downs to their 19.
Mm-hmm.
We had, we were 7 of 12 on third down. Chicago was 2 of 10.
Big difference.
Okay. Now Chicago's 3 of 4 on fourth down. But, subtotal, the Lions were much, much stronger position. Much stronger position. And when you have the net passing yards, we had more passing yards than they did. So even right there, if you take the net away, from the gross, from the plays for loss that they had, we even statistically were better in that area. So
Yep.
you just see some management strengths that Jared Goff showed, and that offense was able to show that the Bears were not. We were 17 points better, probably more than that, because we also had some stops at the end that we really could have probably kept our foot on the gas like we did against Tennessee
Mm-hmm.
and like what we did against Jacksonville. It could have been like that.
No, you're right. You're right. It was in. Yeah, you dial it back because you're in a clock killing mode at that point. Absolutely. No, that's a great point too. It could have been worse. The game was never in doubt, like we talked about earlier. And just kind of wrapping this one up, the Lions staked themselves to a 20-0 lead within 3 minutes into the first quarter. That's it. Now we've seen that before, right? But this is a different team, even different than last year. They don't go into full prevent mode or bend but don't break mode. They keep their foot on the gas a lot more often, a lot better. To your point, like against Jacksonville and Tennessee, I mean they kept it going. And bottom line is they did exactly what you would hope as a fan they would have been able to do. You'd hope. I mean, obviously, you see the stats and you think, Williams kind of gashed him a little bit. I mean, they're going to get theirs. This isn't. I know they're 4-11. I get it, but like you said, they were 4-2 at one point. They had a catastrophic, mental breakdown in a game that cost them dearly against Washington. But at one point, I think the first 8 games of this year, the Bears were 4-4 in last place. And of course, the Packers, Vikings, and Lions were way above, at least with 2 or 1 loss at that point amongst them. And it was the most competitive 8-game start of an NFL division, I believe, in history. So they're kind of they're actually what I thought Minnesota was going to be this year. I thought the Bears were going. Now, again, I didn't think the Vikings or anyone was going to be 13-2 with the Lions, but at the same time, I thought the Bears were going to be around 500, being a real pain in the what. I thought the Vikings were going to be a 5-6 win team, but again competitive, and I thought Green Bay and Detroit were going to roll. Didn't expect the Vikings to do what they're doing. Didn't expect the Bears to kind of fall apart. Quite frankly, their defense is very good. I think their red zone defense is one of the best we've seen all year, Coach. Them in Tampa, they were very good in the red zone.
The Chicago Bears do some fine things. They definitely, it's a league of parity, and these are old things that we've mentioned before. They're not completely lost. They're not one of the worst teams in the league. Their record is not good, but they definitely, there's plenty of upside. And it's not not something I like to say because I don't like them. So. Probably more than anybody in the division, I don't. The Bears fans just, I have had plenty of interaction when I was a season ticket holder, throughout times. And, I've seen enough to know who, I really, don't care for much in regards to a fan base and an organization. And that's one of them. And I don't feel awful bad for them at all. I don't mind saying that. But I also will give them credit. They're not that far away. There's some nastiness. There's some ability to do some things out there, and they certainly have a lot of promise on offense. They just got to put it together.
Yeah, absolutely. So tough division. I mean, Coach, we're talking about going into this Monday Night Football matchup against the 49ers. The Lions 13-2. The Vikings amazing 13-2 as well. This is a must-win football game for the Detroit Lions, and to be 13-2 and not only be fighting for a first seed but fighting for the division still, that's surprising, a bit disappointing as a fan, but at the same time, Coach, it's football. That's what happens. Let's talk about this game, and I wanted to jump into the injury situation. We already talked about the Lions in depth. the Niners, it's like a tale of two cities here. Their issues are on the offensive side of the football. And they're 6-9 this year, coach. They have not been able to adjust the way the Lions were able to adjust on the defensive side of the ball. Right now, the running back situation in San Francisco is really, really in trouble right now. McCaffrey, Jordan Mason on the IR, Elijah Mitchell on the IR. Isaac Guerrero was hurt last week. He's questionable with a hamstring, coach. They're on their fourth running back right now. And these are all quality players too. That's how deep they are. They're a great team too, but they're on their fourth running back now. They've Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback, he's questionable with illness. I think he'll probably play, but man, to not have him too, that would be almost catastrophic to their offense. Brandon Ayuk, their top receiver, one of their top receivers, he's been out for a while. He's out for the year. And coach, on their offensive line, Trent Williams being out, and and also Barth, the interior lineman, and Feliciano both out. Jalen Moore all on IR. Wow, they've been decimated on offense, and they haven't been able to overcome it the way the Lions have. Talk about the Niner offense a little bit.
Well, what really has happened to the Lions defense has happened to the 49ers offense. Mm-hmm. And Purdy's had to miss some time with some injuries as well. George Kittle's missed time with injuries as well. They still have some of those pieces out there. Deebo Samuel, they're there, but getting them the football has not been that easy. Mainly because they don't block quite the same, and that running game's just not what it was. It's just not what it was. And once again, too bad, so sad. But we also can see just how 1 year can be different from the next. I mean, this is a team that was, the Lions were right there at the door with their hand on the handle. So were the Philadelphia Eagles. But the 49ers were the team on the other side of the door, and they remained that way. And they were going to be standing in that doorway.
Yep. Well,
injuries pulled them right out of that, right out of the room. So, that it's just been catastrophic for them. We have had more injuries, sum total, than they have. But again, it's been the type of injuries that we've had that and the tremendous work by our pro personnel staff, led by Brad Holmes, to be able to get players in here that are supporting what we've got going on. And they're coming and going. I mean, thank you very much, David Long. Thank you very much, Quan Alexander, for what you were able to do and helping us, really, really compete in a game against Buffalo and win a couple of football games in that area, in between there. So, I mean, much appreciated. And now they're no longer, Quan Alexander may be back on the practice squad. I'm not sure. I don't believe David Long is. I think we've already replaced him with a football player on the practice squad. So, I mean, we continue to do that shuffle that makes the team and the roster strongest for the given opponents ahead. So, that's why these things are being done. But I mean, the 49ers just have not been able to do that. They've tried. I mean, look at the running back position. They've thrown out, another one. They've all been somewhat effective too when they play. But, the Niners have been really devastated offensively, especially by this injury bug. And it really just strains their defense because with their offense is really seemingly ineptitude now in regards to sustained drives or doing as much of anything with any kind of consistency, it just wears out, and the defense usually gives way some time in the second half.
Yeah, exactly, because that defense is stellar. Right now, I'm looking at the report. Leonard Floyd's questionable with a shoulder. Jaylen Brown is questionable with an ankle. The safety, Dre Greenlaw, I believe, is going to be out for this game with a calf. That's a big loss for them on defense. The defense, to your point, still stellar, but they're on the field a lot. It doesn't matter how good you are, you're going to wear down at some point. Coach, this is a 6-9 Niners team that's already out of the playoffs. I have a hard time seeing. I mean, I'm sure that they've got a lot of pride over there, and they want to play well, and they know Detroit's coming hard. They know Detroit has a chip on their shoulder over the championship game last year. They know Detroit needs this game badly. They would love to play spoiler yet again to the Detroit Lions. Wouldn't ruin their season per se, but it certainly would be a setback if the Lions weren't to win this game. What do you think the Niners, what do you see the Niners bringing to the table in this one to counter the Lions?
Oh, they're going to, for them, yeah, it is about playing spoiler and beating us again this year. You know, they ended our season last year. They can wreck seemingly try to wreck our season this year.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't they try to do that? That's exactly their role in this. And they're capable of doing so. They're still strong enough and capable of doing so because, like you said, Drew, they can play defense. If you can play defense, you have a puncher's chance in every football game. Whereas, you know, it depends how long you can play defense. If you can play defense for the whole 60 minutes, yeah, you have a real good shot of winning a football game. Don't care who the opponent is or what the matchup's supposed to look like. That being said, you know, we have a response to take. And you know what? If we won 52-0 against the 49ers, does it avenge anything from last year? Does it change anything from last year? It doesn't.
No.
So I mean, we really, yes, that is something that's natural to come right into your head, and it can play a little part of it. You know, what happened last year and avenging that. I mean, if that's what motivates you, great. But ultimately, that shouldn't be the motivator. It should be about this team right now and what we need to accomplish. If we win and the Vikings lose in Green Bay, which there's a distinct possibility of that happening, we're the number 1 seed. So
the only bad news is, Coach, is that they're going to be in Minnesota for that one. That's the only bad news on
I'm sorry. Well, nonetheless, that damn team has won so many games at the last second. It's time for that not to happen. And hey, that of the 3 divisional opponents is probably the one I respect the most in regards to their fans and who they are. And that's a great football team. That you know, we have garnered a lot of the national credit, and the Vikings have probably been in our shadow that way a little bit. But look what they have done. And this is like what they've done this like 2 or 3 times, you know, in the last couple of years, having seasons like this, like, you know, 13-2 type years going in towards the end of the year. They've ultimately ended in the playoffs rather quickly. But that team they've won so many Rasputin football games where they just pull it out in the end. And the Cardiac Kids, where the Lions have been a little bit more convincing in the vast majority of their victories. We've had some close ones too,
oh, yeah.
but you know, we also have been a little more convincing in some of our wins. Hey, I guess that's my point. You know, okay, yeah, Green Bay's got to come to Minnesota. That's a tough opponent. They're barely hanging on to beat, you know, teams like Seattle and stuff like that. So, you know, is Green Bay a little better than Seattle? I'd say they're very close, if not maybe a little bit better. The bottom line, it should be nothing to do with last year going in there and avenging that loss. That's not going to do anything for this year's team. Winning this game and Minnesota losing shores things up. And we are the number 1 seed. And that game against Minnesota is going to mean a little bit less than it would, against Minnesota at Ford Field the following week on January 5th will mean a little bit less. So that was my point, Drew. You know, that's what it should be about. It shouldn't, regardless of who's playing that other game and where they're playing it, it shouldn't be about last year. It should be about this year and winning this year for this year.
That's a great point. And you're right about the tiebreak or the scenarios. And we want to talk about that a little more. Yeah, if the Lions win in San Francisco Monday night, coupled with a Vikings loss against Green Bay on Sunday, the Lions clinch the North. Now, you're right. The Sunday night, or it's not Sunday night, I think it will be Sunday night. They haven't announced the times of the games yet, but that's still the marquee game on the schedule next week. Because even if the Lions have the North clinched, they'll still be playing for number 1 seed, I believe. Although I think they might have it clinched over Philly if they win and Minnesota loses. I believe, regardless of whether the Lions would lose to Minnesota, they would still have the North, and they still would have the tiebreaker over Philly for conference record, I believe. Win the games, right? I mean, that's why Campbell said he doesn't even care what happens in the Minnesota game this week. They are coming to win the Niner game. They're not going to take. That's
all they can do. You can't control the other games.
Nope. And but the irony will be, excuse me, they'll already know the outcome, obviously, because the Lions are playing Monday night. But I think that's a great mentality, because if you need to do that, and it would be a great luxury, you could rest guys in that Minnesota game if you needed to, assuming everything is clinched at that point. Now, if Minnesota beats Green Bay, and they certainly have a greater than 50% chance of doing that, being at home, they're both very good football teams. Although I would love to see Jordan Love show us what he's all about, because he's a very good quarterback. And right now, I mean, it's hard for me to say I'd be a fan of any team in our division, but certainly we'll be Packer fans on Sunday.
Oh yeah,
no question about that.
Sure.
But the bottom line is the Lions, to get that first round bye is so huge. It gives Anzalone an extra week. It gives Montgomery an extra week to prepare. It keeps all roads leading to the Super Bowl through Ford Field. The bottom line is that the Lions don't win the North, they're going to be the 5th seed.
Yeah. That's a doomsday scenario that
I know we don't want to discuss, we don't want to dwell on it, but it's worth mentioning, because that's how important these games are. It's not like, well, if they finish second in Minnesota, it's not, they still have a great record. Yeah, they'll have a great record on the road as the 5th seed. And even when they win that first round game, which will not be easy, because they'll be either at Tampa Bay or the Rams or something. Remember those teams, guys? Those are damn good football teams. You don't want to have to play in the playoffs on the road necessarily. And even if you win that game, you're probably shuffling the deck, and you're going to have to go to Philly, or not Philly, but you'd probably have to go to Minnesota. That sucks. That's not what you want.
And those are great points, Drew. I mean that just goes to show, in the AFC things are pretty much locked up. Here, there's that much fluidity where we could go from the first seed to not even having a home game, and we've by a lot of the lay fan that just follows from a distance, probably thinks the Detroit Lions are far and away the top team, just by all the different wins and stuff like that, and stuff that's been on TV in regards to them. So that's a really, really strong point, is that no matter what, we to go 15-2, that's just what it's going to take this year, probably to ultimately be the number 1 seed and the NFC Central Division champion once again. And so in other years, it could be 11-6 that takes this division.
Yeah.
In other years, you can go 12-5 and be the number 1 seed. But this year, it is extremely competitive. So full steam ahead. Let's get these victories, and then we can look back at what's been a phenomenal regular season, and take a deep breath, and because we're gonna have a bye, and see how things could shake out coming into us.
Yeah, no, great point, Coach. Let's circle back into how the Lions need to approach this game to win this football game, Coach. Let's start on the offensive side. We know the Niners have a great defense. We know Greenlaw's out. We know Floyd's banged up. Anything you changed in terms of philosophy here under Ben Johnson, or are you just going to go straight ahead and say, we dare you to beat us?
Well, he's got a scheme. He's got a scheme against what he perceives as their weaknesses, or what they're going to give them. We've played each other before, and that NFC Championship game from a year ago is the template from what they're going to be working off of. Are they going to try to run the football game? Of course. We're going to try to run the football probably at least 40 times, I'm guessing, against them, or at least 30, 35 plus, and establish that. We're going to try to be quick on offense. We're going to be movement conscious, trying to, open things up through motion and field spacing and route concepts, and keep doing things like that. And I'm sure there'll be a little wrinkle thrown here or there as well. What will follow up stumble bum, which so many fans want to get into and all that. and that caters to a certain fan base that thinks that's cute and that's fun. And, that's, I guess, this modern era where you got to have the last word and the last little barb and that last little flex to just show you that you won. Those kinds of things, I guess, mean a little bit. And, they're fun and all, but, if they have impact is when they really are meaningful.
Yeah.
If we're going to have a little wrinkle with something there with the Niners, we shall see. But I know this. I don't want anybody from Electronic Arts coming over here and talking about Madden covers for next year regarding any Detroit Lions football players. There's such thing as the Madden curse. You've heard of this, Drew.
Yes, I have.
You do know who was on the front cover of Madden 2025, don't you? His name is Christian McCaffrey.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So once again,
that's right. It took a year or two off, but yeah, for the most part, it's
back.
It's back.
It's back.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have to just we have the identity of being the most potent offense in the NFC, and we need to just impose what that is, and that's going to be through that run game, because it could be similar conditions. Maybe not quite as bad as the Green Bay game in Green Bay. That was like a monsoon.
Yeah.
But it could be wet in San Francisco. They're definitely having some, weather off of the Pacific coast, mainly in the form of rain in Northern California, Oregon, and parts of Washington. They're getting a little bit of snow in spots too. Not in San Francisco. We're talking about east into the Sierras, but and this isn't a weather show. We're not, pretending to be Jim Cantor from the Weather Channel here, but it could be a little wet in San Fran, which is not unlikely for this time of the year in Northern California.
Yeah, and then certainly that levels the playing field. We know that, and I don't care what the sport is. You get weather involved, it takes away advantages. So as Lions fans in this particular scenario, it'd be much better dry. There's no doubt about that. But I like the philosophy of getting the run going and making sure that that's the predominant way to attack, because that's also going to eat clock. And it's going to keep that defense on the field, not out of fear of their offense, but out of trying to just wear them down. And I think going back to how they were winning games early in the year, second half, third quarter, you start running it down their throat and wear that front seven down. That's the way to do it. Now, on the other side of the football, Coach, what's AG's approach here against this offense? Because obviously it's banged up. So is our defense, though. So you're kind of dealing with apples to apples here. How do you approach it if you're AG?
Eliminate what they're struggling with. And that has been a strength of theirs, which is running the football. Eliminate it. You are going to have to bring pressure. Just going straight up and down and playing man and being base on these guys will allow them to have puncher's chances of staying in a football game and making plays with guys like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and some of the playmakers they still do have on offense. You said Ayuk's playing, right?
No, he's out. He's on the IR. Samuel's healthy, Kittle's healthy, but he's out.
So no Brandon Ayuk. And that's a big playmaker off the field. And that's the guy that made the big play off of Vildor's helmet last year. So, I mean, and it took those kinds of plays for them to win that football game or pull it away. So, yeah. I mean, just take away what they're struggling with, which is really going to be running the football anymore and pass protecting. They're going to have that breakdown and just get our offense back onto the field, get them behind the sticks. Get it to third down and 7, third down and 8, and come up short in spots where they can't go for it, and keep rocking and rolling that way, and send these guys one step closer to a draft prep.
I like it, Coach. Let's talk about how we see this one shaking out. I'll start it off this time, and let's see how close we are on the scores together, because we don't discuss this beforehand. We never do, but we've been pretty much in lockstep. All of us have been on the Sports Peninsula podcast all year. Realistically, I know the Niners are going to be able to do some things in the passing game, but I love that the Lions secondary is relatively helpful. Obviously, losing CD is not good, but like you said earlier, Coach, Amik Robertson stepped up beautifully. Brian Branch stepped into the slot like a well-fitting glove. He's very acclimated to that spot, as well as safety. Melifonwu coming back really helped a lot. I see this as still a close game, but I don't think it's ever going to be in doubt per se. I think the Lions will win 30-28, but I don't think it's going to be that tight. Quite frankly, I see the Niners getting a late touchdown and maybe trying to get it onside or something. But realistically, I see the Lions winning 30-28. I see that Sunday night game, and I say Sunday night because I believe it'll be Sunday night against Minnesota, being for all the marbles, because I fully expect the Vikings still to win. I would be, quite frankly, a little surprised if they don't. But that's how I'm seeing this. How you see it, Coach?
Yeah, I think it's going to play out a little more defensively because, I just think the conditions and what they're going to try to do a little bit. And I see it playing much more closely than it did the Chicago game did. This is not going to be some 20-0 halftime score. It's not going to look like that. It's going to play a lot closer. But the score concepts and the score patterns are going to be relatively similar. But in the end, it's going to be one score closer. I'm going to go Lions 27, 49ers 17.
I like that too. Either way, it's a 14-win campaign and hopefully a 15-win campaign at the end of next week. Coach, just before we wrap this one up, I mean, we're as a fan, this has been a tremendous season. As far as how the Lions have played football this year, we couldn't ask for anything more as a fan base. But the way they've overcome injuries isn't just epic for them as a team. I'm not sure, and I've said this before, I'm going to keep saying it, I'm not sure we've seen this level of roster denigration from injuries and still to play at this high of a level for a team to do that. Look at the Niners. The Niners won the NFC last year. They're a great football team. They are 6-9, hopefully going to be 6-10 after Monday. There's only two teams in the top 10 teams that have the most players on IR, and the Lions are leaps and bounds ahead of everybody at number one. Only Houston and Detroit have winning records in that group. That's how big of a deal it is. When it's next man up, that's cool. When it's the third or fourth man up at a position, boy, you better have a Brad Holmes and company on board with that. But Coach, you got any last parting thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Well, yeah, and it's guys coming in and out too. It's guys coming in and out like Dave Long and Quan Alexander. And it just goes to show kind of what the culture and what the program and organization looks like right now. And Dan Campbell's the guy leading that charge. Brad Holmes is right there with him, and they're both culture agents in of their own right. But Dan Campbell, the way he has things on the inside of the playing of the football operations is just immaculate right now, and the way you do things. And, it has been remarkable. But it will be something to look at. If we can win this Super Bowl, if we can get this done, this is the greatest Lions football team, bar none. That argument can be made if we don't win it, because it's the winningest team in franchise history. And they'll look at all the different people that contributed to that. It is certainly amazing.
Yeah, special season, and it keeps rolling. Monday Night Football on ESPN in a couple of days here on the 30th. It's going to be awesome. Coach, can't thank you enough. Glad you've had a great holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and
same to you, Drew.
Thank you,
and all of you too that watched. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for subscribing. Check us out on the ESPN network on the Roku channel every Saturday night at 7 p.m. We post. Check out our YouTube page and our Facebook page as well. For Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners, my name is Drew. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you next week. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Follow us on YouTube so you don't miss an episode at the Sports Peninsula Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter X. Just look for @SportsP Podcast, and follow us to keep up on sports around the great state of Michigan and beyond. You can also catch our show every Saturday night at 7 p.m. on the ESPN Network channel as part of Roku. When you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one, Sports Peninsula Podcast.